and welcome back to Financial Mastery Simplified. I am your host, Jax Crider, and today we have the lovely Miss Debbie Watson on. And Debbie is in the financial space. She deals with some financial planning stuff, but quite a bit more than that. So I will let Debbie introduce herself and kind of tell you why she's excited to be on the podcast today.
Great. Thank you so much, Jax, for having me. Yes, my name is Debbie Watson, and my company, Team Watson Redeemers, where I strive to empower individuals by addressing the financial illiteracy cancer that we have today while fostering financial literacy. And I do that through comprehensive solutions that we aim to redeem lives and make a measurable impact. So I help families from beginning to protecting their income with life insurance. If they have debt, teaching them how to get out of debt by a debt stacking program, and then putting together a plan to get them to retirement. Unfortunately, people aren't able to retire nowadays because they just don't have enough money. So it's teaching them different simple concepts, not talking over their head, but having them feel empowered by the concepts that I teach. So I just love helping people. And unfortunately, I come across people all the time that they had been either taken advantage of or they just didn't know about certain things. And so they've wasted a lot of money, and a lot of money that could have been growing in the right element. So,
Oh, yeah, for sure. I mean, you and I both see that, unfortunately, a lot, right?
right.
And you and I are very much on the same page of that. We feel like a lot of people in our space don't do a good job really talking to people like they're real people and breaking down things. I mean, that's the whole goal of my podcast, is more or less that people don't have access to good information. And even though you and I talk about all the time that we would give them this information and help them understand it, a lot of them are just afraid to have the conversation with us, right?
Right.
Because it's scary. It's scary to raise your hand and admit that you don't have these tools. But as I remind people all the time, you don't have the tools because no one ever taught you, right? Your family didn't
Exactly.
teach you. The school system didn't teach you. Lots of people failed you. So you don't go into adulthood and then magically something falls out of the sky and knocks you on your head and says, oh,
Right.
great, here it is.
Yeah.
Here's how you
Yeah.
adult.
We learned it from our parents. So unfortunately, the parents and they learned it from their parents. And so unless people are brave enough to admit, I don't know what I'm doing, and sometimes it's out of embarrassment, sometimes it's not wanting to feel stupid, and
Right.
which there's not a stupid question with me, so
Yep.
that's the great thing.
Well, I was going to say, I feel the same way. A lot of times people don't realize that you don't know until you ask, right? Like I joke that I'm going to write a book called Ask the Question or something around that line, because as a 2-year-old, my favorite question was why. And I always was asking the question. And probably all my classmates over the course of time thought that I was the most annoying person ever because I ask 800 questions, but that's okay.
Yeah.
I am that annoying person. But yeah, so I brought Debbie on today, guys, because she is really passionate about the same things I'm passionate about, and we want to kind of break things down. So
Yeah.
specifically today, I think, Debbie, you're going to talk a little bit more on the financial aspect of investing, right? So kind of stocks and things like this. So I'll start by saying that for those of you who are listening who you have a major employer, right? And most people these days work for an employer that typically does offer some kind of 401k plan or something like that. And for those of you who don't know, that's basically a retirement plan that you're allowed to invest in with tax-free dollars. And oftentimes your employer is going to help match some of that money. So I'll kind of let Debbie get a little bit into kind of maybe breaking down 401k a little less, a little bit simpler than what I just did, and kind of, why these kind of things matter and why you need to be investing, things like that.
Yeah, exactly. So 401ks, exactly what you said, are company based. Some companies match and some companies don't, but that is free money. So you should always take advantage of free money.
Right.
So if they're going to match at 3%, you should be putting in 3%. They're going to match at 6. You should be putting in 6, because again, they're going to match that dollar for dollar. So
Right.
that's going to help you accumulate faster. Now, the thing is, because 401ks, for one, unless you have someone helping you pick what I have found sometimes, if you don't have that support from your employer, then people could possibly pick the wrong investments that could do them even harm. So you really need to
Yeah.
make sure that you understand what type of investments you need, stocks versus bonds, how many, it depends on your age. There's a lot of detail.
Yeah.
The other thing in that is a lot of times 401ks do have a higher fee. So if you leave the company, you don't want to leave it there. You definitely want to get with a financial person and roll that over into your own IRA. Now, a lot of 401ks nowadays do have Roth money in there that you can actually put in both. So pre-tax and after tax. So if you have that ability, I would recommend honestly doing both. And a lot of times they have calculators to help you with that. But it is just super important that I don't recommend that you put anything in a 401k over the matching. At that point, then you open up your own Roth IRA. That way you can control the percentage and working with a specialist that can help you make sure that you're going to get the right return and
Right. So
watching your return even in the 401k on an
so for
annual
a
basis.
second, let me talk a little bit to those of you who are like, what the heck are you guys even talking about? So remind yourself that most employers are incentivized to try to do some kind of retirement for their employees. So way long time ago, probably you guys may have heard your grandparents talk about having what's called
Pensions.
pension, right? So what
Mhm.
used to happen is when you worked for an employer for a real long time, they were setting aside money for all the different amounts you worked and things like that, and they were putting it into an account where after you had been there for a certain amount of time and you retired, they would give you a monthly amount. Okay. That shifted, gosh, what, 90s ish, Debbie, something like
Yes.
that.
Yeah.
And around the 1990s, which that's dating, some people weren't alive or around back then. Some of us were. But anyways, they shifted to retirement programs called 401k. And basically, this was to give you more power in your decision making. So
Right.
you could invest it in what you wanted to invest it in, not what the company wanted to invest it in, right? And that was supposed to be a good thing. And on its face, it is a good thing. But what most people don't understand or realize is that most employers don't realize that most employees have no understanding, especially when you're
Right.
first starting out, right? You get out of school, whether it be high school or college or whatever it is you went to, you get your first big boy, big girl job, and they're throwing all these forms at your face about medical and 401ks
Yep.
and all these different things. And you're like, I have no idea what 90% of this crap is that they just threw at me. So if that is your situation and that's the case, hear this and hear this now. If they're offering any kind of match, what Debbie is saying is you should at least put that much in there to make sure you maximize on the match. And what she means by free money is they basically are taking the amount that you're putting in there and they're taking their money and they're matching it. Sometimes it's 1-to-1, sometimes it's a 50%
Right.
match, but you should be doing that. And you're saying to yourself, okay, but I just got out of school, I'm broke. I promise it's not going to make enough of a difference in your day to day. You really won't see it because that is pre tax money.
Right.
So a lot of people use that excuse and they tell themselves, well, I'm 20 years old. I have 40 years to save for retirement, whatever. I hear that. But I'm telling you that it's really not going to make a big difference on
Right.
your amount.
Right.
Okay.
And the earlier that you start putting in, the less money you have to be, because we'll talk about a concept called the rule of 72 of compound interest. So, again, if you start early, then you won't have to put it much in because you have those many 40 years of compound interest. So, that's
Right.
super important.
Well, and then remember, don't get lost. It's kind of like mortgage. There's a lot of terms. And I think that's another place that people get really overwhelmed. They're like 401k, IRA, Roth, blah, blah, blah. There's like all of these things. Okay. The biggest and easiest way for you guys to think about it is almost everybody who's listening to this podcast, I guarantee you, has a bank account. Okay. This is just like a bank account, but it's only for retirement. Like it's not like you're putting money in there where you can just take it in and out like willy-nilly.
Exactly.
That's not how that works. Okay. But there are different kinds. The 401k kind is the employer program. The IRA kind, it stands for individual retirement account. That's what IRA stands for. It's an acronym. And that is an account that you can put in your own money. And again, it can be prior to taxes or after taxes. And that's what Debbie's going to go into a little bit. So don't get too lost. And if you do have these kinds of questions, guys, seriously, reach out to somebody like Debbie or even somebody that is in this space like myself. We can answer the questions, or if we can't, I promise we get you the right person, right?
Exactly. Yeah.
But we're just going to give you kind of the big overarching. So sorry, Debbie. I just want to make sure like I roll back because
for sure.
when we start throwing a lot of terms out there, I get it. People get really overwhelmed and they think, oh my gosh, I have no idea what the heck that even is. Because it just sounds like a bunch of garbledy-gook.
Yeah.
That's what mortgage sounds like too. It's like its own language.
Yeah, I really do try to pride myself on making things simple. And that's why, just like, your tagline, as simple as a peanut butter and jelly sandwich. When I'm drawing or educating people on the fine concepts, I'm drawing elevators. I'm drawing, cows for dollar cost averaging, or shoes for women. So I try to make it very, very simple so that they understand and that they feel comfortable with the explanation.
Yeah, absolutely.
No matter what age. That's the great thing. No matter what age.
Exactly. So yeah, so getting back, like what she was saying is, and if you guys weren't catching that, 401k, you definitely want to put some money in there, especially up to like whatever the match is for your employer. And just kind of as a FYI, guys, not all employers match, and some of them won't match until you've been there a certain amount of time.
Exactly.
So some of them need you there for a month, 6 months, a year. They'll tell you, and if the person that's talking to you about it, like your manager or somebody, doesn't know, HR knows. I promise they know. So again, don't be afraid to look it up or ask HR. Somebody is going to tell you that. So, okay, Debbie, you made the suggestion that you don't want to just dump tons and tons of money in the 401k. And you explained that the reason is that you maybe don't have as many choices, and it can be kind of expensive overall to manage, like long-term, that kind of thing. So your recommendation is that they should be putting dollars into IRAs. Is that correct?
Correct. So, and preferably into a Roth IRA, because a Roth IRA won't give you any tax break now, but when do you really want to have the most of your money? You want it at retirement. So when you're pulling money out with a Roth, you actually get 100%. So if I'm pulling out $5,000 a month to live on, I'm getting $5,000, versus if I pull out money out of my traditional IRA, I have to tax at my tax bracket. Yep. So yeah, and some people will have, you want both, because kind of think of it like this: is I need 5,000, I pull out of my traditional, I can take out the difference in taxes with my Roth. That's why it's so good to have both. So, and the 401ks, so people understand, those are just money accumulators. When you retire to start taking out, you're going to have to roll it over to your own individual IRA, because it's your money, not the company's money. So that's even why I said, if you leave your company willingly or unwillingly, you need to go ahead and get that over into your own IRA.
Right. Well, and for those of you who aren't understanding the difference between the Roth and the IRA, so IRA, you're going to put the money in before the government takes their cut, right? Before the taxes pull out. And the Roth, you actually do pay taxes on that money, and then you put it over into the IRA account. And the reason that really matters, right, is because of the fact that, like she said, you can pay taxes on it when it's this little bitty amount of money, right, sitting over here. Or you can pay taxes when it's grown to be this huge amount of money. Right. And which one would you rather do, right? You're going to pay way less taxes on the larger sum if you go ahead and do it that way. And that's the reason. And most professional planners, financial planners will tell you that same thing. So even though, you're paying a little bit more on it right as you speak, it's better off. And I get it. When you're young, it's really, really hard. You convince yourself that it's so hard to let go of those $20, $50, $100, whatever it is that you can set aside. But it is a really, really important thing to do. And a lot of employers now, will actually allow you to establish and set up IRAs and even Roth IRAs that you can have automatically pulled from your paycheck,
Mm-hmm.
to make it
Yeah.
easier on you. Just
Yeah.
FYI.
Exactly. Exactly. Yeah. So, just on that, it did make me think of, too, if they do have that option between Roth and traditional, just make sure that you look. And I know in most of them, they can give you a calculator that will show you, hey, if I put some money in here, you're really not going to see that much difference in the overall picture. So
Yeah.
definitely be, if you have that option, make sure that you're putting some into a Roth, not just the traditional IRA
I was going to
or
say, what happens,
traditional
guys,
401k.
I'm
401k.
not saying that none of you are going to come out of school and be in a high tax bracket, but it's rare. Usually you're going to be at a kind of a lower tax bracket because you're just not making a huge amount of money. So
Mm-hmm.
that's why the suggestion is let it be taxed early, if you will.
Right, right. I'll give you an example that I just always love. We have it in a book that we have put together. It's called How Many Works. And if a 22-year-old maxed out what they could put in into a Roth, which is 6,500 a year, and so that's a little over 500. So they're like, oh, I can't do that. But just it's funny when you look at it. So from 22 to 29, you maxed it out. You put in around 44,000 and then you never put anything in until 67. Because of compound interest, you would have over $2 million. So you had those earlier years with before family and stuff that you were maxing it out, versus if you start at 30 and then you pay all the way down to 67 maxing it out, then you actually have paid over 220,000, but you have less than the full 2 million. So it's
Yeah, it's
just
crazy,
so
right?
interesting to see. And we even I show clients, me personally, I started late. That's why I got into the industry 13 and a half years ago, because we were super far behind on retirement and I needed extra income. And now I definitely do this full time helping people. But I was just like blown away and saw that in my 20s, I could have been putting $200 back and I would have well over $2 million, versus I wait 10 years. I've lost half of that. And when I started, I had lost over $500,000. And now I have to put in 1,500 a month versus 200. So that's why it's so important. Even if you just start with $50 at 16 when you get your first job, which I can do a mutual fund at $50, over $1 million if you never did anything again. So it's just so important to just start somewhere as soon as you can.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, people just don't realize that the power of money is stuff like that, right?
Yeah.
And that's why, like, there's also good debt versus bad debt. There's also,
Right.
like, there's just so many pieces that they don't really quite understand. And let's be real. I mean, for those of you who are living in your 20s right now, trust me, Debbie and I were both there at one point in our lives,
Right.
and it's hard. Like, you want to spend it on all the fun stuff, and we live in a world where it's YOLO, and
Right.
you just want to do all the things or whatever. But remind yourself that you can do both. It is possible. It is possible to plan for your financial future and have a really fun and wonderful life, right?
Yeah.
It's why I preach a lot that you need to work backwards. And this is kind of in a way what Debbie and I are both saying, right? Is work your way backwards. Like, where do you want to be in 40 years or 50 years, and kind of work backwards on what that looks like, right? Like what you have to do now versus what, and you, like I said, you can still live a comfortable life and things like that, right? So just think about that before you are in your younger years or just chunking all away. And if you're not in your younger years, if you're listening to this and you're past 30, past 40, past 50, there's a hope for you. Don't misunderstand us. We're just saying, if you're
Exactly.
listening to this and you're like 15 or 18, now's your time. Like, you can make huge dents in it for the future you, than you
Exactly.
can if you are in those later years.
Yeah, exactly. You can always catch up, but you cannot get to retirement and click your fingers and expect to have money coming in. It just doesn't happen. We're not Bewitched, which some of you probably don't even remember who that is, but
I do. I love that show.
yeah.
We're really dating ourselves now, but yeah. So I mean, that's one of the bigger things, and I know you wanted to talk a little bit about like diversification too. So you should tell the
Yeah.
story about your client who had a 401k, right? And
Right.
what happened with them.
Yeah, unfortunately, when we sat down, she had had it for almost 10 years. She started in 30 and now she's 40. And unfortunately, when I looked at it, she was only in bonds, which means over that 10 years, her return, which should have been over that 10 years, should have been probably close to nine, maybe 10, because we've had some up and down markets, but 9% to 10% return. She had negative 2.78 because she was in the wrong avenue. It was almost like she was in a savings account, and a savings account, you actually are losing money when you look at how much inflation is today.
I was gonna
So we
say,
need a savings account for an emergency fund, but not for your retirement.
right.
So now we're putting a plan in place and helping her, and mixing it up between stocks and bonds, but she needs to make up some time. So
I was gonna
that's
say, for those of you who don't have the ability or they don't have the Debbies in their life or they're too scared to call the Debbies in their life, I'm gonna tell you that almost every single 401k program, if you go into the back end and you log in to assign your money and tell it where you want it to go, there's one that says like, I'm going to retire in this year, like, fast forward 40 years or whatever it is at retirement age.
right.
And it will mix up those funds and be investing in a whole bunch of different things. So, at worst case scenario, right? If you're not going to utilize your resources and you're not going to talk to your financial professionals who can help you maybe make even a little bit better decisions than that, at least go please put them in something of that kind.
Exactly.
Like, don't
For
just let
sure.
them sit, like she said, in a mutual fund, because people do not realize it's just the same thing. Like we tell our clients all the time, why in the world would you want that money sitting in cash? Like we've got people that are very, they come from very cash heavy cultures. And I
Right.
totally understand, like the countries they come from, they don't trust the banks, they don't trust the financial institutions. I will tell you, in the US, you have a lot of protections. The FDIC, you're FDIC insured, which means that up to so much money, if the bank goes belly up, the government actually backs that, right?
Mm-hmm.
So
Right.
don't freak out about putting your money in the bank, but you also don't want all your money in the bank. You need your, like
Exactly.
she said, your emergency fund. If it's beyond an emergency fund, it should be being invested in stocks, bonds, retirement account. You should be doing something else with it,
Right.
because you're going to lose dollars
Yeah.
every single month as inflation increases. And if
Right.
you need, because it's hard for people who are young, especially, to understand inflation. The easiest way is to paint the picture, right? So even if you're 20, you still remember going to the store when you were 10 and buying something at the store, right? Whatever it was, a pack of gum, whatever it is. Go to the store now. How much does it cost? It costs
Exactly.
more, whether it be 10% more, 50% more, 30%, it doesn't, whatever, right? Percent more. It's the same thing that's happening. Like if your money's sitting in the account, what you could have bought 10 years ago and bought now, it's different. That's basically inflation, and in the easiest way you can ever possibly think about it.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. So that is when it comes to investment. There really are 3 Ds that I do look at. One is discipline when it comes to retirement. You don't want to take it out. Now, the government says you can take it out at 59 and a half without any penalty. If you take it out before that, that's a 10% penalty, along with if it's in a Roth, or excuse me, in a traditional IRA or your 401k, you're going to be taxed on that. So taxed at your tax bracket plus 10%. So that's
Right.
huge on that. So you want it to go for a long time, and don't listen to the market goes up and down, but it has never stayed down negative. If you That's why you kind of look at it. If you look at how many years it's been up over 83% versus a 29% went down market. And what happens when it's down? it goes back up. And that's
Right.
why people lose money when they pull out of the market. You know, several people in 2008, because of the mortgage and everything that went on back in 2008, so many people pulled out of the market and just lost tons and tons of money. You know, a lot of those people that were getting close to retirement, unfortunately, if they did stay, it took them about 5 years to get back where they were, but at least they didn't pull out of the market and never be able to get those up years. You know,
Right.
that's why you want to stay. The
Well, and
next thing,
remind yourself, we get
go
it.
ahead.
Stuff does happen. Like
Hmm.
life happens. But if you're thinking about having to remove money and things like that or whatever, this is where using your financial resources become incredibly important, because that financial person can help you navigate it a little bit, right?
Hmm.
Because the reality is we get it. Life happens, like especially with all the crazy things that are happening with the economy and everything else. Nothing is perfect, and I mean, I'm a true testament to that. You know, I've taken some financial risks that some have paid off, some haven't. I personally have taken money out of my retirement account, sometimes what I know I really shouldn't have, but it was kind of a situation where I didn't really have a choice. So understand that things do happen, but if you have people in your corner like Debbie, that is going to allow you to ask the right questions and her to
Hmm.
help you navigate it. You know, obviously she's going to tell you in an ideal world, you're not going to take it out at all. But if you have to, here's how we can try to structure it. And then maybe when we get back to a better square one, we can kind of help you aggressively move back
Right.
towards where we were.
Right.
Right.
Right. And that's actually why actually a Roth is a good uh, item to have, because there are stipulations with a Roth that you can pull out without that penalty before
Right.
59 and a half. You know, if you buying your first home, you can pull a certain amount of money out without being taxed if you want to send your kids to college, or if you have medical expenses. So again, that's another reason why having that Roth is phenomenal. With Roths, you don't have to start taking the money out at a specific time, where your traditional IRAs,
Yeah,
you
they
do
force you.
have to start taking it out at 73 now. They have raised it, and you know, I'm sure they'll continue to raise it. But again, all I can say is don't count on the Social Security. You got to start saving on your own, because if you're counting on Social Security, good luck with that.
I was gonna say, so for those of you who don't know, I actually went to law school, and when I was in law school, I took a course called Elder Law, and we talked a lot about like Social Security and like laws that deal with people who are older, and we were having the conversation about Social Security, and all of us in the class, we firmly believe that Social Security won't go away, but what will happen is it will get pushed farther and farther out. I mean, you're already seeing it like
Exactly.
on when you're able to take it. So, I mean, by the time those of you who are listening who are maybe in your 20s will finally get to take it, you know, you'll be freaking 80 years old and they'll finally give you some Social Security. I
Right.
mean, I'm pretty much going to be dang near 80 by the time they let me have it too. So I feel your pain, but
Right.
I'm just saying that, like Debbie said, you never want to count that the federal government is going to help you with that. And not only that, but think about it this way. So, like my husband's mother, she gets Social Security and she took it the earliest possible moment they would let her take it. And she doesn't get very much money. It's
Right.
like $1,300 or $1,400. I mean, last time I checked, how many of you guys in anywhere in the United States that you may be listening could afford
Live.
to live on that?
Exactly.
I mean, you really
Yeah.
couldn't even afford to pay like a rent or a mortgage or any of that, right? Much less have a car, have food, utilities, like, you know, your regular everyday occurrence, right? And the last thing you want to do when you're coming to that stage of your life where, you know, you're not the invincible 20 something you once were, or you're not in your peak earning years or whatever, that you're having to make hard decisions about living with a bunch of people or having to go
Right.
back to work and stuff like that. Like you want the freedom of choice in that matter.
Exactly. Yeah.
And so
Yeah.
again, this comes back to the whole point of my podcast too, is pick your heart. Debbie will tell you all the tools that you need to, you know, be able to invest wisely and really utilize the things that you have at your disposal, right? Compound interest and Roth IRAs and all those things, and that's amazing. But remember that you don't have to do what Debbie says. You don't have to do what I say either. But
Right.
what you do have to do is know what kind of hard you're good with. and what
Exactly.
that's going to look like for the future.
Yeah. Yeah. It's all about educating and then giving you the choice of what you're going to do. Exactly.
Exactly.
So not trying to be disciplined, not trying to pull it out and live off of fear. It isn't a fear base. You need to just ride with the market. But the second D is about diversification. So to that point, diversification is not putting all your apples in one basket. So that's when a mutual fund, or even if you talk about the Roth or 401ks, like Jax had said, making sure that you're putting it into a fund that you're going to go down the road, 20 years from now. So it's mixing it up where you're in stocks and bonds. So mutual funds are very convenient. They have very low sales fees, and they are based on basically putting a money everyone putting money into a mutual fund at different prices, maybe $50, $100, 200, whatever you're putting it in. You have a portfolio manager that is the one that's buying and selling the stock. And whatever that portfolio manager is focused on, maybe it could be large companies. So they're based on your Amazons and your Walmarts and your Visas, and they're the ones researching it and doing, so you don't have to. So the difference when we say stocks, people fear, oh, the stocks are dangerous. Well, if you only invest in one stock, then it could be dangerous, because what happens if that stock goes belly up? You lose everything. But in a mutual fund, there's so many companies that they're invested in. If one company went belly up, you're not going to lose that money. Never in the history has a mutual fund gone bankrupt.
Yeah, which is really a good point, because yeah, a lot of people do think that. And I think people sensationalize, and they think that because maybe it sounds sexy to put it all in, like, there was that movie about GameStop and whatever, and lots of people put like
Right.
tons and tons of their money in, and they made huge or whatever. And it's okay to pull like maybe a little bit of that and take like a chance, but I mean,
Exactly.
you don't really want to do that with all your stuff, right?
Right. Right. Well, and nowadays the younger generation, they Robin Hood and some of these apps, which again is okay with some money, but again, those have high fees. A lot of time, and then you can't time the market. So if you're trying to figure out what's going to be best, I mean, it could be a 24-hour job, and I'm even in the industry, and I don't want to figure that out. Mutual funds are going to take care of that problem, or even as a managed account, you're still moving money, but you're moving it with the same company so that you're taking a less sales fee. So I help with that area too.
Nice.
And then the last D is dollar cost averaging. And so this is, I love this, and hopefully I usually draw this out, but hopefully it'll kind of make sense of what this is. If dollar cost averaging is you're putting money in every month. So just like if you're putting it into your 401k, you're putting it into your Roth, whatever you're putting it in, and you're getting a return of 9, 10, 12%. I have some accounts that are returning to 16 to 20, and I'll explain what that means here in a minute with compound interest. But dollar cost averaging, take a look at it like this. If I came to you, Jax, and I said, Jax, we're going to invest in cows, so you just give me $100 a month and we're going to invest in cows. So the first month, cows are $100. We get to buy one cow. You're excited. Everything's good. Well, the next month, there's mad cow disease over in Europe. So the
Uh-oh.
price of the cow goes down to $50. And you're like, what the heck, Debbie? What's going on? But what you don't see is now you bought two cows. Well, the
Right.
next month, everyone listens to Oprah Winfrey, or maybe we're going on a different diet that we're not eating meat, and so now the price goes down to $25. Well, again, now I'm buying four. Well, then the next month it goes back up, and oh yeah, mad cow disease is gone. We can buy cows. It's at $50 again, and I bought two. Well, finally, Oprah says, or the guy, everyone says, no, I want my meat. I want my meat. And now it's back up to $100. Well, that's 5 months of this up and down. And you're like, get me out of this. This is crazy. You only invested in $500. Now you, though, have 10 cows. So you sell those 10 cows at $100. You've made a $500 profit. But if you were just in the market where it just went up straight, where every month it goes up, the cost is going up a little bit, the problem is you're buying less stock.
Yep.
So you have your dollar amount is maybe like $18 a share, but you only have a certain amount of share, where if the market goes up and down, you'll have 4 or 5 costs for the share, but now
Mm-hmm.
you have many shares in there.
Oh
So
yeah.
very, very simple concept that people just freak out, but what they don't understand is they're just being able to buy more stock at a discount.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, there's a lot of people who they don't really totally understand, a lot of those concepts. Like we deal with some of that similar kind of freak out, in mortgage land, because obviously interest rates fluctuate all the time, all over the
Right.
place, and we don't get to control them or whatever. But then they don't look at some of the other aspects, like for instance, usually when it's really expensive on the interest rate side on our side, that usually also drives up some of the interest rates, like on the savings and the CD accounts and
Exactly.
like some of the other aspects. So like there's always pros and cons to everything. And it's just really about having a solid financial plan in place of like kind of knowing, what's going on and trying to adjust, and knowing that not everything you invest in is going to pay off, right? Like
Exactly.
literally everything you invest in life in general is a risk. Like
Hmm.
even going to school, like people believe like, oh, I went to college. Well, that is a financial risk, because maybe it pays off and you make a lot of money, and maybe you don't. I mean, I
Right.
talk all the time because people will say to me, well, you have a law degree. Why are you not a lawyer? Well, it's a misnomer that all lawyers make a lot of money. Some of them make a lot of money, and some of them do not make so much money, right?
Right.
And so like people don't think about that all the way through. So maybe the law degree was really valuable and really, paid out, and maybe it didn't pay out, right? And so like again, people just don't like think about the big picture. So even though it's hard sometimes when you're starting out to think about the big picture, it's super important to remember and think about the big picture out of things,
Exactly.
right?
Exactly. Well, just
But
one more concept I'd love to share, and then,
sure.
if you have any questions, but um, when I'm talking about compound interest, or even what some professionals call the rule of 72, the rule says if you take the interest rate, and we're talking interest rate over a 40-year mark. So, when you're looking at a mutual fund, it will show you since inception, which maybe it was 30 years, maybe it was 40 years, maybe it was 50, maybe it was 12, whatever it is, what the average has been for the
Right.
return. So if you take that interest rate and divide that by 72, that's approximately how many years it takes your money to double. So if you only had a 3%, which would be maybe like your CDs, maybe, I don't know, there's not many CDs out there, but say, you found one at 3%, and you had invested $10,000. Well, 3 divided by 72 is every 24 years. So after the first 24 years, you have 20,000. And after the next 24 years, at year 48, you have a whopping 40,000.
Right.
Mutual funds have averaged 9 to 12%. So now you take that 12% divided by 72. Now your money's doubling every 6 years. So I'm not going to go all the way down because I do have it memorized. I've written this out hundreds and hundreds of times. But that same 10,000 at the end of 48 years is actually 2.8 million. Go do the
Yeah.
math. Go take 6 all the way down and then add it and double it up. You'll see it's approximately 2.8 million. So would you rather have 40,000 to retire on after 48 years or 2.8? I'm sure everyone would agree that 2.8 is much better. So that's why
Absolutely.
it's so important to look at your return, your rate of return on your 401k, on all your investments, because that's what's going to determine, are you going to be able to meet your goals when you retire?
And I also will tell you guys, for those of you who are going to tell me, well, that's great, but you and Debbie are clearly so great at math. So, whatever. Yeah, I mean, maybe we like math a little bit more than the average individual would get that. But on the same token, plenty of financial professionals will help you do the math like itself, right? Like they'll do it for you. So this is where I tell people all the time, please tap into your resources, right? I mean, heck, I had a whole podcast about tapping into your resources with Ashley Corville. We talked all about that. There are people in your circle, in your tribe that know, people like myself, like Debbie. You can reach out to either one of us, right? And our teams. If we can't personally handle it, we know somebody in this space that can handle it for you, like we promise, right? So the biggest thing is just kind of getting your feet wet, getting information, and figuring out what's your heart. What does that
Yeah.
look like? Where do you want to be? How does that look? So, Debbie, do you have any last minute thoughts or whatever before we sign off for this episode?
No, I just appreciate the time to just hopefully make things a little bit simpler, and just to help people understand that there is hope out there. We can make a real meaning impact on people's lives just by educating and sharing where to turn, or just educating them on the resources.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, and that's like I said, the whole goal here, guys. I mean, the whole reason I decided to do this is because there is so many clients I have talked to over the course of time who just feel frustrated. They feel like they didn't really get any good information. And so this is from, ages 9 to 99, anybody in between who just needs a little bit of information and needs to understand. So hopefully this has been a helpful episode. We look forward to hopefully having Miss Debbie on again, because there's all kinds of things that she and I could touch on in the financial space. And we
Yep.
definitely are cut from the same cloth on making sure that you get exactly where you want to be in life. Well, we look forward to you tuning in next week, and I hope you have a great rest of your week.
Bye.